Welcome to The Courage Effect. I'm Suzanne Weller, and this is a show about growth and unleashing what's possible. You will hear inspiring stories about what courage looks like, how we navigate what's getting in our way, and the opportunities that surface when we choose courage over comfort. Let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Suzanne. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to bring today's conversation to you. My guest today learned 2 lessons before she ever set foot in a boardroom. First of all, from her father, who was a former major league catcher. From him, she learned on how to see the whole field, not just the ball. And also from her mother, who is a seamstress, who Julie actually witnessed sewing right through her finger. And instead of waiting for somebody else to help her pull it out, she just grabbed some pliers, took care of it, wrapped it up, and kept going. So the lesson there, learn how to fix things yourself. My guest today is Julie Averill. Julie is the CEO and founder of Gold Thread LLC, where she advises companies on AI strategy and organizational transformation. She was formerly Global CIO and EVP at Lululemon, where she helped scale the company from $2 billion in revenue to $10 billion. She's also the author of Chief Impact Officer. That's her recent book, and we spend quite a bit of time talking about that today. She shares so many great stories. You are going to look forward to hearing them. She's also a Forbes contributor on leadership and technology and faculty at the University of Washington iSchool, where she teaches a graduate seminar in leading transformation. But the story underneath all of her resume is really one that we're going to spend most of today on. It's about the mask that she wore for so many years at work. And she didn't realize how intact it was until she saw one of her former mentors who asked her a question. How is your team supposed to follow you when nobody knows the real Julie? She discovered that day that she had more work to do, and she has spent a number of years in her career making that a reality. This conversation is also about adopting her son from Ethiopia, being with her wife for over 30 years, that relationship and how it's been such an important thread throughout. And also, as she has gone through all of these different journeys with her family and professionally, at the same time that she was leading others through transformation, she really figured out that she was leading one for herself as well. The thread, or maybe the gold thread, that runs through everything that Julie does now is that it's not just about you working inside a culture. It's about you creating the culture, whether you mean to or not. The impact that you can have when you pay attention to what's going on around you and you show up courageously as your true self. Here's my conversation with Julie Averill. Julie, it is such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to The Courage Effect.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm really happy to be here.
I was so inspired by not only meeting you, but reading your book. You embody so many things that the Courage Effect is all about, and the message that we're really trying to share around courageous contagion. I would love to talk about your book, Chief Impact Officer, and I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about your story, because I feel like you have a very story-forward personality, and I think that's really valuable for our conversation. So let's start off with that. What's your story?
Thanks. I like that, story forward. When my kids start telling me that I talk a lot, I'm going to tell them that I have a story forward personality. I like that a lot. So thank you. First of all, I'm really happy to learn about the Courage Effect and be able to be on this journey with you. I do feel like there's a lot of synergies together. So who I am a retail technologist. I spent a decade at Nordstrom, get to lead some of the omni-channel initiatives there, which was incredible. I've went to REI as their first CIO, led a technology transformation there, and then went to Lululemon, was the CIO there during their period of rapid growth from 2 billion to 10 billion. So that's my professional side. A lot more to me. I'm a mom. I'm a wife to a woman that I've been with for over 30 years. I'm a traveler. And I think probably most of all, I'm a relationship builder. I care deeply about people. I care about the humankind. And so for me, working is very much intertwined with the impact that I'm having on the world. And that's part of why I named my book Chief Impact Officer. It's a play on Chief Information Officer, the title that I've held. But I really think the position can be, and now with AI, should be more about impact and less about information. And so for me, I talk in my book about the global impact, how the world's changed me through things like adopting my son Ermias from Ethiopia to creating a technology hub in Bangalore. I feel like every culture that I go into, I grow. I learn and I grow more. And so that's what motivates and drives me.
One of the things that was really intriguing to me about meeting you and also getting to know you better through your book was about your journey as a woman and as a technologist, and how from a young age you got really into technology, early adopter, and you were the odd woman out. Talk to us a little about falling in love with technology when you were a teenager.
I was a nerdy kid from the very beginning. My parents put me in a private school in the 6th grade because I came home every day in the 5th grade crying. I had no friends. All I wanted to do was sit in the front of class and answer all the questions that the teacher would ask. I would have my hand up first, and I was super nerdy. And I mean that in a really positive way. I loved learning. And one thing that my parents did, my dad was working at Radio Shack selling computers, and this is early days. So he put me in a training class to learn on these computers called the TRS-80s, the trash 80s. And I got to learn how to code. And it was the first time that I felt like the world made sense to me. Instead of all the shades of gray that there are in the world, a program would either work or it wouldn't work. And when it didn't work, the challenge of figuring out, like, what did I do wrong? And working through that really satisfied me. And so that was what really started it. Was in the 5th grade, just fell in love with puzzles and with computers. And then when I was in high school, there was a class one computer science class, and it was only eligible to seniors. But I was so excited as a junior that I went and petitioned. I guess I was as a sophomore, so I petitioned so that the next year I could take this class. And I was, as far as I can remember, I was the only girl in that class. But I loved it. And then when I went to college, I decided to study computer science. And that was the first time that I think I really started feeling a bit out of place. I was in one algorithms class, and I walked in, and everybody looked at me like I could just tell, like, what are you doing here? And one guy said to me, "Are you in the right place?" He was in the back row. And I just quietly sat down. And I never made any friends my whole college time in studying computer science. Maybe I made one, but I just felt so different, right? If I would talk to a guy, inevitably I would get asked out. And I just wanted to solve puzzles. I just wanted to learn, and I felt very different. So I think that's the first time that it started. But as I grew in my career and grew in my confidence, it started becoming a little bit like a challenge. So I was at Nordstrom. I was the first female VP in the technology organization. So it was me and a bunch of guys, and it felt like a challenge. I felt like I deserved to be there, right? I was doing great things for the company. It didn't feel like I fit in necessarily, but it felt like a challenge to be there.
Wow. And it's interesting too, because it makes me think about your story overall and being that outsider from the beginning, but never really feeling like an outsider when you started doing it and when you were taking those younger classes. But when you got to college, that's when it started. And that's not the first time that I've heard that from women or people that have been underrepresented in various ways where they felt that they haven't been able to be their true selves, which is heartbreaking. And I know that that's a big part of your journey, is how you stopped hiding. I know you have a whole chapter in your book that is really talking about masks and how we move beyond those masks. And for you, it sounds like not only was it about going on your own personal journey, but also being from a really loving family, and both of your parents teaching you courage, curiosity, and resilience from a pretty young age. I'd love to hear about your dad, because I know that he's a big influence and part of your life.
Yeah, he's also over my left shoulder. My mom is, but she's a little further out of view too. So my dad was a baseball player. He played 7 years in the majors, but much longer just in baseball. And my dad was my rock. I called him multiple times a day whenever I had any sort of crisis or question, like you do when you have a really great dad. But what I figured out, and this was actually writing the book, I realized that he taught me systems thinking. He had a different way of looking at problems, looking at the world. And it was always this, like this big picture first, and then you see the details. So, like if you're working on an engine, you can't just look at one part. And that's what he taught me. So I use the analogy of him as a catcher sitting behind home plate, as the one person that's looking out on the whole field, seeing everybody, and really knowing what's truly going on in the game. And then my mom has a very different story. So she came from a really rough background. Her parents were divorced when that really wasn't a thing that was acceptable. And she had a stepfather that was abusive to her. But she developed this quiet resilience. One of my favorite things about my mom, this is a really difficult story, but when she was in the 5th grade, her stepfather and mother put her in a long-term foster care system. But she refused to talk for the entire year. The school thought that she was mute. She was not. She was just stubborn. And it was this quiet resistance, and it was a steal. Everybody thought my mom was, oh, she's so nice, she's so sweet. No, she's not. I mean, she's nice, but she was tough on the inside, and just stood up for things that she believed in. And so I just really respect who she was as a human being, and how she taught me that the things that are important, those are the things to stand up for.
Mm. And it's so interesting too, when you talk about your mom really creating her own business as well.
She was a seamstress. She made my sister's wedding dress, for example. Incredible seamstress. And when I went to that private school, she had to start working. So that's when she started working at this upholstery company. And I would go there after school and sit with her. So I'd sit across from her at her sewing machine. I would watch her sew. And twice I watched the sewing machine just go straight through her fingernail. She would just go back in the back. She's like, I know those guys won't do anything for me. So she'd just get the pliers and pull it out herself and put a Band-Aid on it and go back to work. And she worked in that environment, but she was always the lowest paid. And she knew, because she took care of the books. She took care of all customer service. She all but ran that place. The only thing she didn't do was take staples out and put staples in the couches, but she did everything else. And she one day confronted her boss, asked him for a raise. And then she said, but why am I always the lowest paid, even with the guys that come in off the street for a day job? And he said, that's just the way the world works. And then he added on to that, what probably would have been fine if he would have stopped there, but he added, and Julie better get used to it too. And that's when he saw that steel resilience of hers. She quit. She went and opened her own upholstery shop, did amazing. The customers, turns out, really wanted to work with her, found her, and she had a very successful upholstery shop that she eventually hired my dad into.
Oh, I love it. I love that she was advocating for herself, and she was advocating for you, and standing up to a system that didn't work, and knowing that at the end of the day, she had to create change. And you've done the same. It's that using your voice, not just necessarily accepting that this is the way that things are. And it's also really interesting, your dad teaching you systems thinking from being a catcher and picking up on everything that he's observing at any given point, and that idea of that only coming to you in the book. So I'm fascinated that it took the book to actually let you see that.
Well, writing a book is a really interesting process. So I had started writing stories for years and years. And then when I decided to put them all together and write a book, I had to go through and which stories fit and what is it behind them? What did I really try to learn? And I had a few epiphanies during that. And my dad's role in that was one of those where, like, I get it. I get what he did for me.
So beautiful. I enjoyed also reading in your book I didn't enjoy about hearing the difficult stories that you had, but how you overcame those difficult stories, and how there wasn't even just one moment of you coming into your true self at work, because you were able to do that more as a gay woman. You were doing that with your mother, started with conversations with your mother and living more of your true self outside of work, but it taking time for you to be able to do that within a work environment. Do you remember one day at work or a specific instance where you got more comfortable and when you were able to speak to it?
I don't know if there was one moment. I did have a realization that it was no longer working. And that, because I thought I was doing great. I thought that I was keeping up this mask. I would speak in vague terms. I, didn't talk about my family very much. And I thought it was fine. I was at work. So why did I need to tell people any of my personal business? And I thought it was working fine until I got my job at REI. And I met with Nordstrom former CIO, Mike Richardson, who is someone that I have a ton of respect for. And he's been a mentor of mine. And he said, okay, let's go out and get a beer. And I was so excited to talk to him about my new job and my strategy coming into it and all the details of that. And he let me talk for probably too long. And then he just quietly paused and he said, Julie, how are you going to get your team to follow you? And I said, well, I have a great strategy that I'm excited about. If you have questions or comments, I'd be happy to hear more about it. He goes, no, nobody knows the real Julie. So let me ask you again, how are you going to get your team to follow you? And that shocked me because I didn't know that I was masquerading and people saw through my masquerade. So that probably was the moment when I realized it was no longer working. Now, what that implied was something really scary for me because the word vulnerability came to mind. And as someone who, as you read in the book, has suffered some abusive relationships in her past, like, I don't want to be vulnerable to anybody, right? I want to be tough. So that word really frightened me. And I had to really think about what he was asking. And I think I realized that I was in a position where, if not me, then who? So I had people on my team who were also wearing masks. And what am I teaching these people on my team if I continue to live behind my masks? And I think that's probably what really got me. And I had a coach that helped me. I had multiple coaches help me think about this and really show me the things that I had stubbornly tried to avoid. And I eventually decided had a speaking event coming up. They asked me what the topic was, and I said authenticity. And the reason I chose it, because I knew that's the one thing I had to work on that I was particularly bad at. And I knew I couldn't stand in front of a bunch of people talking about authenticity if I wasn't truly authentic. And so that was just my way of giving myself a deadline. And then I opened up, and the response was so overwhelming of people who said, I see you in my own story. Oh, I wish I had thought about this. And it was really impactful to me.
So powerful. As I was reading your book, I was thinking about your various stories about how this impacted your leadership, which you were just speaking to. So the idea of, and what a great mentor for him to say that to you, the idea of pushing you and really encouraging you to be who you are and to allow your leadership to come from that. But that whole idea of, as you were coming into your own, and then also realizing you had two managers leave when you were working at a company and gave feedback in their exit interviews about you not necessarily being present, or they didn't really know who you were. And that felt very off base to you. And you realized in those moments that, okay, maybe you were being myopic in how you were approaching it. How in those moments, how does that link in, I guess, to that conversation that you had around leading from who you are? I'm always curious about not only getting that information about, okay, I'm not just in the system, I'm creating the system, and really seeing that. Was that close to that conversation over that beer?
So it was maybe a couple years apart. So these two managers were people that I trusted tremendously, and I adored each of them, and I thought it was mutual. I thought we had a great relationship. So when these were like my number one and number two. And when they quit within a short time frame of each other, and then I got the feedback that they were overworked. I never made it safe for them to tell me that. I just wanted statuses. Right? Why are we off? Why are we off track? How should we get on track? I never asked them, what do you need? How can I help? And I learned so much from that because they panned me in their exit interviews, and it was really painful to read. And clearly the two of them had been coordinated about it and had a story to tell. I have since gotten in touch with one of them, and we've had great conversations, I think healing for both of us. But I was a person that was leading from my business head and not from the heart. So one of the things I talk about in my book now is psychological safety. And that's one of the things that I learned from those two managers, where I wasn't trying to make it unsafe, but I just never worked hard to say, this is a place where you can say that something's failing, where you can take a risk, and I have your back. And that realization hit me. And then the conversation from Mike happened a little bit later, and it probably stung twice as hard because those had happened in pretty rapid succession. And that's when I said, okay, something has to change here. I have nobody else to point to.
Yeah, you have to be ready to hear that, though.
Yeah. I don't feel like I was ready. It crushed me, but it was really good. Such a learning experience. I wouldn't have the perspective that I have now had I not gotten that feedback. So I'm grateful for that feedback now. And it's given me this perspective on how important it is to actively create a culture where people can be their best.
Yes, so agree. You're reminding me of a conversation from earlier in the season with Brent Robertson, where he talks about love punches. So it's when people give you that feedback, right? And it's just like, you don't want to hear it, and it's a really gut-wrenching experience, but it does come from a place of, you need to hear it. It does come from a place of love, ultimately. So I give you that term from Brent.
I like it. I like that a lot. I'm going to use that. I've gotten a lot of love punches. The more you get into closer to the C-suite, they just come left and right. Nobody wraps them in a nice bow anymore. And so I've gotten to the place where I really do believe that perception is someone else's reality. You can choose to accept it or not, but there's always a core of something in there that is a gem for you, that truly is a gift.
Yeah. I'm looking at the world now. I know you do a lot of work around AI, and I want to make sure that we're talking about AI. As a tech leader, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the human side of AI, because we're not striking that balance very well right now. We need to leverage AI, but in so many ways, we are just shoving it in and slamming it in and using it as an excuse to perpetuate stuff that's broken. And I know that this is something that you have seen quite a bit of. So how has AI been introduced to you as a leader from this conversation, and how do you sit in it right now?
Yeah, I think you're so right about it. it hit us so suddenly as a human race when ChatGPT arrived. People have been doing things since the 1950s called AI. And, my team had been working in machine learning, things that are part of what we now know as AI. But it wasn't until November 2023, ChatGPT comes out, and all of a sudden it's available and you can interact, right? Even if you have no technical background, you can interact directly and something's learning from you. And it's enriching your life. It's making, some people, it's enriching that. I can't say everybody feels that way, but those people who used it, and especially I'm talking about board members and investors who could see the potential. Okay, now if this can go into my business, I see tremendous potential. And the first wave was looking at efficiencies. Why do I need a whole team of accountants if I can have this new technology do half the work? I'm going to need half the accountants. And turns out that those efficiencies have not yet quite manifested themselves. But what it did was it created a lot of fear. So we saw so many headlines of people losing their jobs to AI. And they created this backlash. A lot of people don't want to have anything to do with AI. A lot of people are scared of it. And there are some statistics out now that say that 44% of Gen Z will actively sabotage AI in a company if they don't trust it. So that means feeding it bad data, not adopting it when they should, but 30% of the general public too. So those are big numbers, which says that we came out with this technology, and I'm using, the global we. This technology came to us. Then it caught the headlines of these companies that wanted to claim that they're going to be more efficient, they're going to be ahead of the curve, et cetera, created this fear. And so I spent a lot of my time thinking about inside a company, how do you really make AI successful? Because you have to make it safe, right? If people think they're training something that's going to replace their job, how motivated are they?
Yeah.
So there's this tension right now between AI and it's coming for your jobs. But I think there are some companies that have done it really well. I think Walmart is one that has taken a really incredible way of looking at how to create this as a tool that people can learn from, that they can use in their jobs, that will help them do more instead of looking for how can they do more with less. And those companies are figuring out how to not slam it in like you were talking about with all this commotion, and instead figuring out how to listen to their employees, how to leverage it, how to create an environment where people want to do more, learn more, and not be threatened by it. So that's where I spend a lot of my time.
It's so interesting that Walmart is one of the companies that is sort of leading the charge on doing it well, because I would not historically think that. So
yeah, and I can't speak for everybody in Walmart, but I'm just saying there are a few companies that are taking a very thoughtful approach to it versus what I think a lot of companies has done, taken more of a hammer approach. I want to see 20% efficiencies from this organization, put AI in to make that happen.
Yeah. I also find your approach very refreshing, with not only with AI, but how you're talking about technology and leadership, because I do believe that a lot of it is that idea of speaking truth to power, or just, having uncomfortable conversations and not being afraid to challenge thinking and to assume that the way that we've done things, or that we've maintained, I say that in air quotes too, because I think that sometimes it's just kind of keeping a body alive in a way, like doing triage, which isn't really helping a company or a workplace or a culture evolve. And when you talk about not only doing digital transformations, but also transforming people, that takes a hell of a lot of education, curiosity, and courage. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it takes all of those things. I think the more AI that comes into our daily lives, the more important leadership is, because AI is going to be able to do the computations. It's going to be able to do the things that we can easily automate. But what it can't do is replace human judgment. It can't replace empathy. There's so many things it can't do around the intelligence that we as humans have. And this is why the subtitle of my book is Real Transformation Comes from Human, Not Just Artificial Intelligence. So the tool is a piece of it, but the tool is almost like commodity, right? We can all buy the same sets of tools, the same models, but what we don't buy is how it lands in our organizations and the culture that it lands in.
Yeah. One, it's the whole idea of soft skills, right? Another air quote. Can't stand that term because it's, hard skills are the soft skills are the hard skills. Let me say that correctly first and foremost. And you've said that culture isn't soft. I mean, it is infrastructure. Right. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. And when did you first see a soft thing break a hard system?
Yeah, I do talk about culture as both competitive advantage and as infrastructure. And I saw it in real life from what we built at Lululemon. This is how you get teams of people to innovate at scale, right? They have the psychological safety to say, I don't know, to say, I tried it, but it doesn't work. And to be able to bring in other people around them to solve a problem together. And the opposite of that is siloed behavior. It's people who are in it for themselves, people who are afraid to speak that truth to power, as you talk about, and will continue on something even though it's broken. When I first started at Lulu, there were a couple of really big projects that as soon as I came in, I was like, these projects they're all but dead. But nobody had acknowledged it to the leadership because they feared what was going to happen. They knew the company didn't want to take a big write-off of millions of dollars. So my first day, I was like, there's two big initiatives. I know we've invested a lot of money in them, but we should stop investing money in them. And then underneath that, it revealed this culture that didn't have psychological safety. And what that causes is it causes friction in the organization. It causes things to slow down. Decision-making becomes slower. Roles and responsibilities are vague or undefined, and so people run into each other. But culture, when it's done well, it's magnetic. You can create an environment where people truly want to be there, want to work together, and want to solve the hardest challenges together, that hold each other to high standards. And I hear people talk about hard skills and soft skills as if they're a continuum. And I don't think they're a continuum.
That's interesting.
Right. Because I think you have to have
polarities. Yeah.
I think you have to have both. And I don't think you have to choose. I think you can be incredibly talented technically and incredibly good in how you show up as a team member. And that's not how big tech worked, right? There's a lot of people in big tech that are known for their, shall we say, personalities. And I don't mean that in a good way, right? I don't mean that in a good way. And I don't think you have to choose.
Yes. I know that from personal experience as well. And that was actually, that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with my husband, who was a technology leader, because he was, I would sort of call him the CTO whisperer, as like mid senior level management. He was the one that really put people first in so many ways and was able to straddle and to be in this zone of ensuring that it was people first. I mean, it was always like, how do we use technology to move a business forward, move an organization forward, to your point as well, and do that through people and allow it to also move people forward. And that is a mindset.
It is. Yes, you're right. Yeah. Sounds like you got a good one. Those people are rare, but they're really important.
Well, and the other thing that I love is that story about even before you started at Lululemon, how the site was down and you were the one doing all of the problem solving and solutioning before you'd even walked in the door.
And what that showed was a culture that didn't have accountability. So they had outsourced the entire maintenance of the website to a third party. to Oracle, and Oracle had, they had sold their data center that the Lululemon website was in to IBM. So IBM had an outage and nobody knew that it was running the Lululemon website. And that's because there was no ownership, especially on the Lululemon side. There wasn't one person that said, look, it's my job to make sure that we are always there for our guests. And because of that, because people just kind of did the jobs that they were told to, there was a lot of just a lot of things that happen when you don't have true ownership of things.
Yeah. Well, and it is impact. I mean, it's revenue, it's results, it's success, it's all of these things that are required. I mean, what does that require? And it is, how do you make impact? And people make impact. And it is commitment, it's accountability, it's working together, it's collaboration, as you said too. One of the other things that I really love about you is with your social presence is that you are very family forward. You would share a video about your son going back to Ethiopia. I'd love to hear a little bit about that, how you opened up maybe more to sharing some of your family stories.
Yeah. Oh, you put a quarter in me, as my dad would have said, because I love this topic. So our son, Ermias, he's 19 now. And when he was 6.5, we went and adopted him from Ethiopia. So he was fully fluent in Amharic, didn't speak any English. And we had to teach him how to speak English like you would any child that you gave birth to, right? So we went over, I think, with the mindset of thinking we were going to teach him and bring him into our lives. And at some point, we realized that the opportunity was much bigger than that. And that was to let Ethiopia in our lives. When we went over, it was the second time, and we were bringing him home. We brought him out of the orphanage, and we were staying in a guest house. And he did not know anything about us, right? We look different, we talk different, and we're in a country where everyone looks and talks like him. So that first night, instead of putting his head up with our heads, he put his feet up by our heads in a quiet act of rebellion that said, I'm not ready. I'm not part of you. And so it was tough. Like that first day was tough. And we went for a walk. We were going to a coffee shop, and we walked down this dirt street. And this woman was walking toward us. It was a long dirt street, so you could see her walking toward us in a head to toe burqa where only her eyes were visible. And Ermias is not wanting to hold our hands, not wanting to do anything in association with us but walk. And as she got close to us, she started singing, There Was a Farmer Had a Dog, an English song, the bingo song. And he starts singing back with her. So he knew the bingo song. And somehow she knew. And she gave us our first way of connecting. It was incredible. So just these moments where we got these gifts from strangers that opened us up a bit more. And, I still think about this woman that I never even saw her face, but she gave us such a gift because we sang that song 100 times. Whenever it would just get quiet, we'd all start singing the bingo song because it was the one thing we had in common. And when we were eventually able to get in contact with his birth family, that's when the relationship really started to blossom. And, their family now, we text nearly every day. We go see them. We just took Ermias back to see them for the first time this January, which was incredible. The whole family, all 5 of us, went back, and we surprised that family, all but one of them, who knew we were coming and help us plot it. That trip was just so full of love, where we're all trying to communicate with each other. There's one person that spoke a little bit of English, but we love each other. And so we talk just through gestures and stories or picking up a few words here and there. And as we left Ermias, he was so filled with love. And he said, Mom, most people only have one family that loves them. I have 2. so it's just been like, it's expanded my world and been such a beautiful part. I've had a lot of leadership lessons in it, but mostly just getting a view of another culture and the things that are so beautiful about that culture that I had never had any awareness to.
Mm. It's such a beautiful story. And I love watching the video. And as you said, like seeing everybody just erupt basically and know who he is and just completely embrace him and love on him and hearing him reflect on it. I also really like that you recorded it and you posted it through his voice. So we'll include a link to that in the show
Oh,
notes so that
thanks.
people can
Yeah, we
watch
did
that.
that day when we were there. We were in Ethiopia, and I wanted to help him process his emotions.
Yeah.
And so I sat with him and I said, "Is it okay if we videotape this?" I was thinking for a future, just to look back on it because it was so much. And so we had a really beautiful conversation, and then we created a small video from it.
It brings me around to a final question that I want to ask you. And it's that whole idea of expansion that you were just talking about, expanding what you let in, how you said Ethiopia was now a part of our life. This second family is now a part of your life. But the idea of being open to transformation by expanding who you are willing to become. How has that shown up for you? I mean, obviously you just told this beautiful story, but I'm curious, as you're going into the new chapters of your life, how does expansion look for you now and maybe moving forward?
Well, it started with me having to put down those walls, to realize that the walls that made me feel safe were no longer serving me. And safety wasn't the goal. I had to realize that safety is not the goal. For me, it's lived experiences and being, just learning and growing. And once I decided that I was going to live this true and authentic life, I gave myself permission to just take whatever comes and go fully into it and just embrace things that might seem crazy, right? Adopting a 6-year-old from Ethiopia might sound crazy, but why not? Like, why wouldn't we do it? We had the resources to do it. And then I don't know. I think it's just a journey that I'm on now, that I'm not held back by my own masks that I put on that were restraining me for so many years. It feels so good to be free and to be able to just be myself. I'm the only one that can do that. So gave myself permission to be that person.
Well, and also in turn, as you say, you're giving other people permission as you're doing it for yourself. So it is that idea of creating that environment, of expanding it out and making it, starting with your story and with yourself, and then allowing other people to do that as well, to be their true selves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what leadership really comes down to.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you telling your stories and sharing it, and you continuing to push the envelope and helping more organizations and leaders and humans and your family to really push that envelope, to be more courageous and be more expansive in who they're potentially able to become. Any final thoughts you want to share with our audience?
It's just been an honor. I love what you do so much, and I think these are really important conversations. So I'm grateful for you to have read the book and given me such an opportunity to have a great conversation with you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, pleasure, Julie. Well, everybody, we will make sure that all of the links and everything that we talked about are in the show notes. Thank you again, Julie, for being here, and thank you to all of you for listening. Stay courageous. Thanks for spending time with me at The Courage Effect. Before you go, a reminder. The way that you lead is the way that you live. There is no brave version of you at work that shows up small everywhere else. Courage does not compartmentalize. It is a daily practice in the small choices you make that nobody claps for. That is the work that we do at Weller Collaboration, helping leaders to stop performing leadership and start practicing it from a lived, real place. For more information, check out wellercollaboration.com. If this episode gave you something, please listen to our next one. That's how you can give back. Share it with somebody else who is wrestling with their own brave next step, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. A quick thank you to my guest, to Dave Nelson for creating our theme music, and to Heather Groneck for her administrative magic. I am Suzanne Weller. Keep choosing courage, one honest moment at a time. I'll see you for our next show.